Dire situation on Earth where scientists search for a new planet that can sustain human life. They discover a planet and plan a scouting mission to colonize it. The voyage to the planet will take many years, so the crew of the mission will reproduce on the ship, with the third generation being the ones to reach the planet. The crew is genetically engineered from leading scientists, raised and trained solely for this mission.
Richard, one of the men involved in the planning, enters a facility where the child crew is being raised and monitored for their education. He comforts them and later suggests he go with them to raise and protect them, allowing the mission to launch sooner. Years later, the child crew has grown into adults and is seen carrying out their routine on the ship.
They drink a blue liquid and go about their day like robots.
Cell expresses doubts about the importance of their lives, but Richard comforts her by showing her the garden on the ship where they can grow their own food. Christopher is having trouble sleeping and is up listening to the sounds of the ship. The next day, he and Richard are in the hydroponics bay checking the state of the plants when Christopher receives a message about toxicity in the water.
Richard dismisses his concerns, but Christopher is curious and asks Zach about the ingredient T56J, which is causing the toxicity. Later that night, Christopher and Zach figure out that T56J is in the blue liquid they've been drinking, which is a drug that pacifies and dulls their personalities to prevent overpopulation on the ship.
They stop drinking the blue liquid and share the information with Kai and Julie, along with the information about a hidden compartment on the ship. Christopher later confronts Richard about lying to them, but only mentions the unmarked compartment, Pod 3. Richard tells him that the mission must have lied to them for a reason and that the pod might be for the third generation. After the session, Richard sends a message back to Earth to request permission to be honest with the crew about everything, but the message will take time to reach Earth.
Next day, Christopher has a fantasy about Sella while they stand in line. Zach and Christopher are fighting in the gym, taking it too far, as they are feeling the effects of not taking the drug. While fighting, they hear noise and go to an observation room to see a fellow crew member, who tells them about a possible alien life form. Sella and Richard are in his office discussing dried plants from Earth when Zach sees Richard touch Sella's shoulder and gets jealous. They lose contact with Earth, and Richard informs them that the transmitter needs to be fixed. Zach goes with him while the others continue with their roles. Later, Zach approaches Sella and touches her inappropriately, and Richard gets him off of her. He learns from Phoebe that Zach has stopped taking the drug, and he finds Christopher and learns that he has also stopped taking the drug. Tension rises between Richard and Christopher as they argue about the drug that was implemented to control the behavior of crew members. Richard reveals that the drug was meant to prevent precisely the type of behavior that Zach exhibited. Richard asks Christopher to help him fix the transmitter and support his objections to mission control once they regain contact with Earth. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew is in their positions as preparations for the spacewalk are underway. As Richard and Christopher work on the transmitter outside the ship, Christopher experiences sensations that he hasn't felt before, and Richard keeps a close eye on him. Suddenly, something appears on the screen next to them, and it throws Richard away from the ship, causing a malfunction on the ship. No one knows what happened, and the ship begins to have all sorts of errors, from navigation to communication. Inside the ship, the crew hears noises and grows restless. They check to see if anything else is outside, and they notice a creaking sound. Suddenly, there is a fire in the systems room, and the medical team and Sella try to resuscitate Richard. Despite their efforts, Richard passes away, and Sella, who is the chief medical officer, pronounces him dead. Later, the crew holds a meeting to discuss what happened. One of the crew members mentions that he saw something on the monitor when the incident occurred that looked like a force jumping into Richard, almost like it was something alien. The crew is left to grapple with the mystery of what caused Richard's death and the strange events that led up to it. The crew is recovering from the aftermath of Richard's death and fire in the systems room, and Christopher is doing his best to keep everyone focused and on task. The crew realizes that all of the surveillance footage has been deleted by the fire, so they need to choose a new chief officer. Zach suggests himself, but the others insist on holding an election. Christopher is ultimately voted as the new chief officer, much to Zach's jealousy, although Zach congratulates him regardless. Christopher's first order of business is to repair the damage to the transmitter, as well as other parts of the ship affected by the fire. The surveillance system is the last item on the repair list, as they hope to see what happened to Richard. Sella goes to Richard's office to collect his personal archive, and Christopher finds her there looking at Richard's photographs and videos. They discuss the importance of family, and Christopher asks Sella if Richard had romantic feelings for her, but Sella explains that he was simply feeling alone. They then watch Richard's video diary, where he expresses his deep commitment to the mission and how much he cares for the crew. Later, Christopher finds the crew in the cantina, where they are angry about having to repair the refrigerators to prevent food spoilage. Zach suggests having a feast to celebrate the new chief officer, and after the meal, Kai warns the crew not to drink the blue liquid anymore. They all dump it. Sella and Christopher enjoy watching Richard's videos, laughing, and reminiscing about their late leader. As tensions rise on the ship, Christopher becomes increasingly attracted to Sella, while Zach sets his sights on Julie. The crew begins to let loose, play fighting and having fun, even looking through Richard's personal archive. But when Sella catches them in Richard's quarters, things take a turn for the worse. Zach threatens Sella, claiming that Richard can no longer protect her, and she grabs a scalpel to defend herself. Christopher follows Zach, worried about what he might do, but when he finds Sella, he tries to help her instead. The crew hears a strange crackling noise, and tensions reach a boiling point when Kai flies into a rage and punches another crewman who gets too close to Julie. A fight breaks out on ship. Christopher tries to intervene but is unable to stop it. The other crew members eventually break up the fight, and Kai is taken to the med bay. Christopher confronts the crew and warns them about the dangers of losing control on the ship. He reminds them of their mission and the importance of working together to ensure their survival. The next day, Christopher discusses the recent events with Sella, who tells him that the crew is still in shock from Richard's death. She suggests that they need a sense of purpose and direction to help them cope with their situation. Christopher agrees, and together they come up with a plan to improve morale and re-establish order on the ship. Their first task is to repair the surveillance system so they can determine the cause of Richard's death. Christopher assigns teams to different areas of the ship and begins to delegate responsibilities. As they work together, the crew begins to come together and trust in Christopher's leadership. One day, as they are repairing the surveillance system, they discover that the footage of the incident that led to Richard's death is missing. Christopher suspects foul play and decides to investigate. He discovers that the missing footage was deleted by the mission control team on Earth. The crew is outraged and demands answers from the mission control team, but they receive no response. Meanwhile, tensions between the crew members are rising as they believe that there is an alien among them. Zach, who has been challenging Christopher's authority, tries to convince the others to join his group, claiming that Christopher is not a good leader. Some of the crew members follow Zach, while others stay on Christopher's side. The group decides to repair the surveillance system to see what happened, but Zach belittles Phoebe's suggestion and tells Christopher to shut up. When the group goes to the systems room, Zach and Kai go inside, not realizing that Christopher had already been there. They go deeper into the room to search for the alien. On the outside, the rest of the group sees something happening inside, and Zach and Kai run out, sealing the room behind them. Later, they tell the others that the alien attacked them. Meanwhile, Christopher brings the surveillance drive to Sella in the medbay, and they watch the footage. They discover that it was actually Zach and Kai who killed Richard by electrocuting him, and that they had lied about the alien. The group decides to keep quiet about this until they figure out what to do. Christopher and Sella hide the drive in her room and talk about Zach. Christopher believes that this is what they are really like without the drug, but Sella disagrees, saying that the two of them are different. The next morning, Zach and his group invite Christopher's group to a celebration in the cantina. When they arrive, Zach proclaims himself the new chief officer. Suddenly, Christopher stands up, plays the footage from the incident, and tells the others that Zach killed Richard and that there is no alien. He suggests that Zach confines himself in his room while they consult the program and decide what to do. Zach confesses that he killed Richard to protect them because he believed that the alien was in Richard and that Christopher had brought it on board the ship. He convinces the others that the alien is inside the ship, hiding in one of them. Zach says that they need to find and kill it, and they all agree. He pits them against each other, and they start fighting. They think it's the crew member who works in the medbay, so they start chasing after him. Christopher takes his group to a secure place in the ship, while Zach's group goes into the medbay and arms themselves. Christopher's group tries to figure out what to do, and some of them want to give up, saying that they can't do anything in the moment. They think they should join Zach's group and try to detain him later because his group has weapons and they don't. Sella realizes that Christopher knows about the weapons hidden on the ship in the secret compartment. Christopher goes to find it by himself and eventually finds it. Zach and his group hear the alarm and take the compartments apart. They find the weapons, and two people from Christopher's group decide to join Zach and the others. Sella, Phoebe, and Christopher devise a plan to get close to Zach. Sella walks up to him and says she wants to be with him and join his group, but he rejects her. Phoebe appears, asking if they've all gone crazy, but they all tell her to shut up. Suddenly, Kai kills her. Christopher and Sella escape, but the others hunt for them throughout the ship. They hide in a vent, but the others quickly find which one it is. They get into an airlock, and Christopher tells Sella to get into a spacesuit. When Zach reaches the airlock, he shoots without hesitation. Suddenly, he's sucked inside because the hatch to the outside has been opened. After Sella kicks Zach out of the hatch, she searches for Christopher and finds him holding onto the ship. They both manage to make it back inside and inform the others that Zach is gone, leading them to put down their weapons. Later on, the crew has lunch together, and Sella asks Christopher how they can prevent something like this from happening again. They listen to some of Richard's recordings, in which he stresses that despite the challenges, those who persevere are proof that humans are worth saving. The crew holds another vote for a new chief, and Sella is elected. She records a diary entry outlining their new approach of voting on everything and their commitment to staying on course. The crew continues to repair the ship and work together peacefully, while Sella is shown pregnant with Christopher's child. The baby is born and grows up alongside other children on the ship. Over time, the older generation ages and the ship approaches its destination. 86 years after the mission began, the Humanitas ship is seen floating in space as it prepares to land on the planet. The older and younger generations look towards their new home on the alien planet.